Alrighty, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. Forgot about mute. Hello, everyone. Incredible greetings again. We are going to finish up talking about printers. I had a guest that came in from out of town, so I had to end the live video earlier, but we are going to continue the discussion on printers and just breaking them down and how they can be used in your craft business. So, one moment. I have to get the video over here set up. And where is my chapstick? Because I had ice and my lips are dry. I have no idea where my lip gloss went. My lips are extremely dry because I was eating on ice. Okay, that's okay. So we're just going to go ahead and hit go live over here. And we're going to get into this because I'm still limited on time. Going back to school this soon. So we have to take the boys to go look for shoes and things like that. So I'm going to try and get this done again in 30 to 45 minutes to finish the rest of it. And like I said, this is part 2. So for the majority of the information, you're going to have to go to part 1, although I will do a quick recap. Okay. So hello, everyone. How art thou? I am Shakia, the professor of HSINK365. We are home of the honestly speaking brand of products, 365 Creative Academy, and Silaholics Anonymous, where I teach you to master using Silhouette Studio. We started a discussion earlier today talking about different print methods and different printers, whether it is an inkjet printer, a laser or toner printer, a thermal printer. And then if we go to the inkjet, whether or not you're using just your regular dye ink, your pigment ink, sublimation ink, eco solvent ink, DTF, DTG. Laser would be your standard laser printer or your white toner printer. And then thermal are, printers like your Rollo or your Dymo, things like that you can use for your shipping labels. You can also create like little stickers for your business to put on packages that might say like fragile or thank you for shopping. Like that's a great way for you to kind of create stickers that you can put in with your products and not have to worry about ink. So we're going to continue our discussion on the printers. All right. So hello. Welcome in. Hey. Incredible greetings, everyone. Hello. How are you? Hello. Glad to finally catch a live. I've been missing them. Well, you missed one earlier, but you're still going to get some great information. So I'm glad that you were able to jump on this particular broadcast, which is a lesson in of itself. I'm live a lot. And sometimes it's that people just don't get the notification. Sometimes they're just not able to get on. So if you are someone who's only promoting your business, what you do, you're only making posts here and there, maybe once a day, things like that, people may not be seeing them because you're not posting often enough. I post often. And I still have it where people aren't able to be on the lines. They might be busy. So if that's the case for someone, you want to be able to have that content and try and catch them right at the right time. So if nothing else, I hope that comment encourages you guys to continue to post. You can repeat posts, you can recycle posts, but you definitely need to be very active on social media because people aren't active at the same time on social media. Okay. Ow. Hey, Professor, I've been missing everything with this work schedule of mine. Working for myself full time is preferably in the future. So I will let you know when you work for yourself full time, you will have less time to do stuff. A lot of people, it's this really big misconception that so it's a really big misconception that once you become an entrepreneur or you work for yourself, you work full time, that you have more time because you are now everything for this business and there isn't, anyone really to share that workload with. You actually end up being limited on time. You have less time for yourself, less time to do anything. I'm always surprised at how many people I have on the live video because I always just assume that you guys are just like booked and busy and like working. So don't think that becoming an entrepreneur gives you more time. You actually lose. time in the day, and like you can lose free time. Incredible greetings, city girl, period. Hello. Yes, please, because I'm in the market for a new one. I've only had the Workforce 7720 and not sure what kind to get. My budget is 500. Dang, I probably missed all this. We actually had it talked about. So are you talking about a printer for just regular printing, sublimation? What type of printer are you in the market for? I know I just haven't been able to get on and been busy and booked. Amen. I'm here for it to be booked, paid, and busy. Hello, incredible greetings. All right. So thank you so much, Miss Pooh Bear, for sharing the live. I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing it again. Thank you for all those who have joined. Thank you guys. Oh, we're going to get you guys to double tap that screen. You guys know that I'm always bringing valuable, knowledgeable information. So if you could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. If you're watching over on YouTube, click out of the live chat, go to the main portion and give this video a thumbs up. I will greatly appreciate it. Also, just drop a comment. That helps the algorithm, especially over there on Facebook. Just say, hey, over there. And if you have questions, you don't have to wait for me to go through all of the information to start asking your questions, or, just any comments or feedback that you have, go ahead and put that. I do my best to go back through the feed to make sure that I'm not missing anything. So just in case there is a specific printer or specific print method that you would like to hear some information on or hear details on, go ahead and put that in the comment section now, so that you don't forget, and I will have a reference to go back to just in case it's not a part of, everything that we're going to discuss. Okay. So I want an eco printer. So by eco printer, are you referring to an eco solvent printer or an eco tank printer? So you're looking for a sublimation printer as well as a pigment ink printer. Okay, incredible afternoon, incredible evening, all the way from England. How art thou? Oh, you love my teaching. Thank you so much. Okay, so a little bit earlier, we started talking about, like I said, the different printers. And and so I'm going to break those down again. So when you say eco solvent, are you looking for the converted printer, or are you wanting like an actual eco solvent printer? What are you considering using the eco solvent printer for? And do you have a budget in mind as far as purchasing the printer? Okay. So if you can answer those. But we talked earlier today, I'm going to just do it really, really quick. When it comes to the inkjet printer, it's a process, and that just basically means that it expels ink. I see all too often in craft groups where people are like, oh, you have a sublimation printer, you have an inkjet printer. Well, sublimation is inkjet because of how it expels the ink. If it's not laser or done with toner and an imaging drum and things like that, it is still inkjet. It's just different types of ink. So for those, you have your dye-based ink. So this is dye. See, this is yellow dye-based ink. This is the magenta dye-based ink. And then you have Epson's, well, not Epson, Cyan's dye-based ink. Then, like these are ones common within the craft space. Then you have variations of sublimation ink. So this is the Epson brand for the F570, and then this is our sublimation ink, which is formulated for the workforce or pigment ink type printers. And then you have pigmented ink. So here is the difference in the cyan pigment and sublimation, and then dye-based inks. Okay. Then we have eco solvent. If you were on earlier, don't answer. So we said that this is dye-based ink, right? We have our sublimation and pigment ink. And if you are converting a printer to eco solvent, you have what's like a water-based eco solvent ink. This is one of those. What color ink do you guys think this is? If you were not on earlier, if you were on earlier, don't answer. But what color ink is this? Do you think it is? So we see black. I see cyan. I'm gonna say, thank you for the rose. Thank you for the rose. Oh my God, those people are so. It's like black. We see cyan over here. Cyan. Hold it up again. Someone asked me to hold it up again. That's why you sent it? You're bad, Aquisha. Thank you for the rose. Cyan. Okay. So this, I'm going to hold it to the side. Can you tell what color it is now? And all of them actually look like this. You really can't until you tilt it. So do you see what color that is now? It's actually yellow. But this is a water-based eco solvent ink. This is a cartridge. I have a true eco solvent printer, which is the Roland BN20. It's the least expensive true oil-based eco solvent printer. And as you can see, like with their ink, it's not that, like, it's a true like yellow type color. It's not the dark color like that. So inks are, they're all different. And each printer, its firmware and its makeup, how it mixes the ink and how the colors output and how they show as the colors that you want them to be, based off of that ink, it mixes a certain way. And there's certain things that, you know, for the ink to be able to come out. This is why when you convert, now there's this big misconception that EcoTank printers are not converted and that you're only converting like cartridge-based printer, or if you're doing like DTF and things like that. DTF, if it's a printer that's not made for, like, it's a more extensive conversion. But what conversion basically means is you are using that printer for a method or an ink, a type of ink that did not come in the box. So for a lot of us, we are all converting Epson printers to, sublimation. Whether they come with dye ink in the box or they come with pigment ink in the box, you are using sublimation ink. So when you are using a EcoTank printer that uses dye-based inks, but you're using sublimation ink, this is the number one culprit. It's not necessarily the type of ink, the brand of ink. A lot of them are the same. They're white labeled from the same type of company, but there is slight differences in the color. You can actually order ink from one particular company because we basically get it from overseas. You might have a slightly different color results from that. But printers that actually use pigment ink are best for conversions for sublimation. Printers that use dye-based inks are actually better for eco solvent conversion because it is naturally a darker ink. Okay. So that hopefully helps. Like, you know, I talked about that a little bit more in the first one. You can go back and watch that one. And understanding why some of your colors are off. Dye-based ink technically gives you a wider color gamut, but they are not water resistant. So if you print something out, if you do labels, stickers, unless you are paying for it, and you're going to buy waterproof paper, waterproof stickers and things like that, waterproof photo paper, if you print with a dye-based printer and it gets wet, it is going to run unless that paper is a water-resistant one. Whereas with pigment ink, you can print onto any paper and it can be less expensive, any sticker paper. And if it gets wet, it's not going to run. That is the biggest, like the two differences between pigment ink and sublimation. I mean, pigment ink and dye-based ink. So a lot of people often ask, okay, well, I want to have an EcoTank printer. Can I put pigment ink in it? Will it take it? Yes. Will it print it? Yes. But your colors are going to be off. They're going to be darker because it is meant to print a much darker type ink. So actually, let me show better with, so this is the darker ink. This is a regular pigment ink. So because it's meant to process a darker ink, you're going to end up with darker results if you put pigment ink inside of an EcoTank printer just to get that water resistant property. You're going to limit your color range or color gamut when you are putting pigment ink or sublimation ink into a printer that was made to print dye-based inks. All of Epson printers are piezoelectric. They are free of heat. And that's why they are great for sublimation, but how they are meant to mix the ink and the ink that's supposed to be used with it, that is what separates certain printers from others and why you only get like accurate colors from certain printers. If I go and I print like grays and stuff and I don't have the exact color code and I print it from my workforce printers, which are pigment inks, and my dye-based printers like my EcoTank, it comes out, it's not gray. It's like a reddish tone or a brownish tone, depending on the brand of sublimation that you're using. It can sometimes come out purplish because it is meant to process and mix and print out a different type of ink. So you're going to get colors that are off. So like I said, if you want to kind of hear more about that, you have to watch part 1 for that. Okay. We actually just started, Pam. You haven't really missed too much. So you don't have too much to kind of go back and watch. It says 20 minutes, but we did a lot of intro and stuff like that. Okay. What's I going to say? So that's like a quick breakdown of the different types of ink. DTF and DTG technically are the same types of ink. When it comes to DTG and DTF, or really any ink other than toner, because toner is actually like a powder, there's actually a bit of toner powder in pigment inks, which is where that water resistant property kind of comes from, because this is made with liquid, but it also has toner powder in it. But any regular ink, it doesn't matter if it's DTG, DTF, dye-based ink, pigment ink, sublimation ink, cyan, magenta, yellow, I mean, technically even black, they are translucent. So you're going to see all these hacks with regular ink, sublimation ink for DTF. And because they're putting it to the film, you don't have to weed. I wish people would probably call it weedless instead of like direct to film, or keep calling it DTF. I really wish the terminology and the verbiage on that would change, especially within sublimation groups, because people end up getting this and then they're still trying to put it on darker shirts and it's not working because they see DTF, which is something that's big and trending, and that you can put it on cotton shirts, you can put it on dark colored shirts, but it's because that's a true DTF. The white ink is the star of the show for both DTG as well as DTF. DTF stands for direct to film. DTG stands for direct to garment. So it's a big old printer that has a platen on it, and it will push the shirt or the garment into the printer like it's a sheet of paper, and it's going to print right on top. It will lay down a white base on darker shirts and then put the color on top. DTF lays the color down first, and then it puts the white ink on top. That way, once you flip it and put it on your shirt, the white ink is the bottom layer, and then you have the colors. But the colors are nice and bright because of that white underbase. Without that white underbase, it will be no different than taking sublimation ink and pressing it to a colored polyester shirt. You're not going to see it. So I keep trying to change how people word it. Like maybe like, I mean, you can't even say weedless because there's really no weeding in sublimation other than like if you're using glitter HTV or easy subli or Econo's subli fabric and things like that. But it's like more like a weedless process and not necessarily a true like DTF. It's not the same. Without the white ink, you cannot put a design on darker shirts. So that's a really like major point. So that's why people are either buying transfers or you have to have a totally separate printer. Whatever type of ink that you choose to put in that printer is normally what you should stay with, unless it is a cartridge-based printer. But for all of you guys who have eco-solvent printers, stop trying to go and change it out. Oh, I don't like this one. You better do your research and know exactly what it's for, what its quote unquote limitations are. I don't consider them to be limitations in what sublimation can do. Sublimation does what sublimation can do. If you want something different, you can't go and say sublimation is limited. It can't, like, is limited, but it's not meant to do that. You have to now invest the money and get a different printer. We have a bunch of printers, like a bunch of printers here, all for different things. And we have other printers that we want to get. Speaking of which, let's back up a little bit. I gave this disclaimer in the first video and I want to give it here as well, just because I'm going to talk about a lot of different print methods. And yes, they can be beneficial to your craft business. It does not mean that you need to go out and buy all of these or try and figure out how to get all these printers. It is best for you to figure out what is best for your business. Some things can be outsourced. As crafters, yes, I understand you want to DIY and do everything you think it's going to help you maintain, a higher profit margin. That's absolutely not true. Outsourcing can free up time for you where you are not, doing everything yourself. If you want to be a business, take away that craft part. If you want to be a business, you're going to have to eventually have some sort of help. It's not sustainable, or to think it's going to be sustainable, like for you to do this until you're 70, 80 years old. We want to work for ourselves, but what about our retirement plan? So does this business stop once you reach the age of retirement, or does it keep going to where it can still supply you, in retirement? A lot of times, like certain businesses, people can sell their businesses because they already have like a large clientele. But if you don't have a steady clientele, no one's trying to buy your business because anyone can start their business. Like starting this becomes a dime a dozen. So make sure that you are, if you want it to be a sustainable business, that you are working, is figuring out employees and eventually management and like trying to grow that way. So if you think about it and you have employees, you outsourcing it to a different company, you still have to pay for that material. You would still have to pay for the employees that's going to actually go and, make it or, run the printer and stuff like that. That's all. And a company, like outsourcing to a company, it's like, that's just think of it as just an extension of your business. That's your DTF department. That's your EcoSolve. Like that's your banner printing department. Because if you actually had those divisions within your business, you got to pay people because you cannot do it all. All right. So hopefully, we start to embrace outsourcing prints. You just have to do your due diligence in finding someone who is reliable and that you can trust to get the job done and get it to you and whatnot. Okay. All right. So every print method, like there's like 1,001 different uses. As far as like regular printing and just how you print stuff out, invitations, labels, stickers, flyers, banners, term papers, school projects, invoices. I mean, whatever, all of those things, anything that you can think print wise Any printer that can print out technically can do it. All of the other methods, what you see is what you get. It doesn't require heat to make the colors come alive. Sublimation is the only one where it is heat activated. So what's on the paper is not going to be the true color. Once you heat it up, it is going to be activated. Now, with the other ones, you end up having to put it on something for it to attach to your substrate, but the color is actually still there. Okay. So for your regular type print, whether you use a dye base, a pigment ink printer, or a laser printer, and then for some applications, an eco-solvent printer, the color is just going to be there. And you can use all of those for the same things. It's just about efficiency. Inkjet printers are always going to print slower than toner printers because of how it drops down the ink. The ink carriage moves, and as it moves, it's dropping down the ink. You have some printers that are bidirectional, and it will put ink out going both directions, from right to left and left to right, and that can help it print faster. You have some printers that are omnidirectional, and it only puts down ink in one direction. You have some printers where it will focus only where ink is going to be at. So if, let's say, you have a big sheet of paper and the design is up here, it's just going to go do, 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 do in this area. Then you have printers like Roland. It doesn't matter if your design is in one corner or if it takes up the entire 18 inches. It is going to go do, do, do. So it's not a efficient printer for smaller runs when it's not a time efficient printer for smaller runs or for designs that don't take up. So if you have a design that is small in the corner and also that takes up the full space, it will take the same exact amount of time to print because of how it moves. But then, like I said, the ones where it's going to focus on just where there's actual color being outputted, those might print a little bit faster, but it's not going to give you maybe the saturation, the color, or like the vibrancy that you want. Each printer, you have to look at more than just what it does. You have to look at how it prints. I know that part can be boring, I still talk about it because at some point y'all gonna realize, dang it, that's what the professor was talking about. Man, oh man, like this is X, Y, and Z. I'm telling you, like I live for all things printers and inks and stuff like that, which is why I make smart decisions on the things that I purchase. So your dye, pigment, pretty much anything I've done. So if you look at the ones back here, these were done with eco-solvent printers so that I can print onto adhesive vinyl. If you convert an Epson printer to eco-solvent using the water-based eco-solvent ink, that is only good for HTV. Now, because it's still a regular ink, can you print to regular paper? Yes, you can. Is it going to run? Yes, hell yeah, it is. If you just print to like regular ones. But you can print to regular paper on your eco-solvent printer. If you wanted to print on, regular paper to print out an invitation, it's going to have a weird smell, but it is still a regular printer that doesn't require heat. You could use it as a regular printer. If you can print out an invoice, you can print out a shipping label if you wanted to have one printer. But it's going to go on regular paper and it's going to go on HTV. You could never print to adhesive vinyl. You can print to that little fake vinyl sticker, but that's not the same as the vinyl that's here. If you print to a sticker paper, there's no UV, and even also with this one, there's no UV property. So if you end up putting it outside over time, it's going to fade out. Whereas with you have some UV protection. With these or any of these, you would have to seal them, put something on top. So yes, the entry to doing them and using these smaller printers and these desktop printers, yes, you will pay less to buy the actual printer. The ink might be less, but the additional steps that you would have to do to protect it now adds on to that price, whereas you end up paying more for these, whether you outsource it or you purchase your own printer, and you don't have to do all that extra stuff. Make sense? All right. So questions on pigment. I think I see one here. What are dye-based printers for EcoSolvent? Any EcoTank printer except, so 16600 and 16650 are pigment ink printers. Every other printer on Epson's lineup of printers, doesn't matter, like they keep changing these numbers. If it's not a 16, as of right now, their pigment ink printers is 16600, 16650. Anything else is a dye-based printer. I'm coming up with a list of vendors because I know my business is not doing numbers like that. Okay. So once again, any questions on dye-based or pigment ink printers? And just to kind of like what you can use, if I set it up for like imitations, so you can do like stickers, labels. My sister was using just a regular inkjet printer to put like stickers on styrofoam cups, on plastic cups. And that's great because they were just going to be disposable. If you are looking to have a cup that's going to have longevity, we don't want to put a sticker from a regular print, like just a regular sticker, onto a quality cup. So that's something that you also have to understand is some print methods are just, hey, this is just something quick. I might use this to just get a prototype. So I may keep a regular inkjet printer to print onto Jet Pro 3G. Can you do shirts from a regular printer? Yes, you can. You can print on transfers for darks. So that's your Jet Pro 3Gs, your DTVs from Caesar, things like that. And that's just from a regular printer. So you might use that just to see the design, mock up the design, have some that you can put on somebody, take pictures of, because you're going to do like a pre-sale, but you're going to actually print it with DTF or DTG or screen print or sublimation or whatever. You're just using that as a mock-up, as a prototype. You want to make sure the sizing is right. You can utilize your printers for that. They don't have to be your quote unquote money makers, if that makes sense. Okay. I see your question. We are not at that point yet, but I will answer your question about the BN20 and BN20A. But I have a specific question on, did you have questions about dye-based or pigment ink? We haven't gotten to the questions about those printers just yet. One more thing, because I talked about conversion. When it comes to DTF and converting them, because it's wet ink and desktop printers have the pinwheels in it, people tend to think that how you do a DTF printer or filling up a cartridge is like the converting. Like I said, an EcoTank printer is converted, but with DTF printers, you do have to take out the pinwheels. If not, you're going to end up with like the little marks on it, which is why I don't understand why people are wanting to use it for sublimation, because if your main thing is sublimating items like this, why would you want to mess up your printer by taking out the pinwheels and limiting how far you can print? So if you really watch good content on the DTF printers, they will tell you that you can't, once you take those pinwheels out, you can't print to like the last 1 inch of paper. So if you had like a 13 by 19 film, you're really only printing 13 by 18 at the max, 17 and a half, because you're not going to have anything to grip your paper once it's inside of that well. And once it gets past like the little photo grip, like the paper grips in the back, once it's in that middle part, and if it starts, it can move. So you are limiting yourself because you have to take those pinwheels out the front because that ink is still wet. You need that ink to be wet to be able to put the powder on it and cure it. So most people are taking those rollers out, but you are now compromising how it feeds your paper. And then because of like the waste with it, because you end up having to, run a lot of printhead cleaning and stuff, especially for that white ink because it's so thick, they will cut a hole in it to have a tube for a waste tank that's like not this little box because you're going to have to do so much. So that is a more detailed type conversion. But all printers are converted if it's not the ink that comes in the printer. Okay. So now let's talk about EcoSolvent. Well, now let's go into like EcoSolvent printers. The Roland BN20 is the least expensive version of a EcoSolvent, solvent, or latex printer. Solvent and EcoSolvent, technically the same thing. It's just that the smell, this actually doesn't smell like this. To me is not an EcoSolvent water-based ink. This is a solvent ink. This ish stinks and is very, very strong, which is like what a lot of solvent and latex printers are. If you go to big print shops, they will have very good ventilation, whether it's like the vents that go out, or they're going to have doors open. Like if it's a smaller shop, they may always have a door open, because this ink, baby, tis strong, tis strong, tis strong, tis strong. Whereas with my Roland, that is EcoSolvent. It's better on the environment. It's not so it's not salt. It's not a full-on solvent. It's not so abrasive as far as the smell. And then latex is one where it's going to be more durable for outdoor situations and like like not say rugged, but like it might be more abrasive situations. Latex ink will, like the latex printers will work better. We think about like, latex balloons. It's not quite like that, but it is like that when it comes to that. So outdoor stuff, or where you need it to just be very, very durable, people will choose to have the latex printer. But if you're just doing like banners and stuff where the inside, like solvent or EcoSolvent printers work great. Yes, you can print still like, casket wraps. Yes, you can print to a solvent or EcoSolvent printer, because this is like pretty much the same material. This is printable vinyl. This is Oracle. I forget the number, but it's Oracle printable media. Yes, you can wrap caskets with this. You can make banners with it. You can make posters with it. You can make, you go to the store and like if you have kids, the character ones that are all broken up, that's for the wall, that's for repositionable. There's printable, repositionable vinyl, and you print that out with one of these large format printers. If you convert it, remember, you cannot do these stickers. Okay. And there's a bunch of different brands. If you ever get the large format Epson printers, that's nothing more than a workforce printer on steroids. It is still a pigment ink printer. Yes, you can print out paper, banners, and things of that nature, but you cannot print out to vinyl, whether it is banner vinyl material or if it's HTV or adhesive vinyl. It is meant for paper, and you can put glossy paper, matte paper, satin paper, luster paper. You can print on all these different papers, but it's just a glorified pigment ink printer. The Roland is the least expensive EcoSolvent printer on the market, hands down, and then it goes up from there. So to answer your question, the differences between the BN20 and the BN20A, the BN20, you can have, it's actually a 5-channel printer. So you have cyan, you have cyan, yellow, black, and then for your magenta, well, you're going to have one magenta, and you can either have a double magenta, which for some, I don't know why the magenta is like the color that's used most, but it does print a little bit faster when you have the double magenta compared to when you don't. You also have the option of putting white ink. So if you are someone that's going to do clear, white ink has no effect. Like it's not going to help it look better because you're printing to white media. So if you're doing heat transfer vinyl, if you're doing just regular decals on white vinyl, the white ink means nothing to you. You use white ink if you're going to print to clear vinyl, the window clean, things like that. Anything that is clear, or even on the holographic, when you do the holographic, you put the white down, you're not going to have that holographic look. So how you keep that holographic look is just using the cyan, magenta, and yellow, and because that is translucent. Remember I said, it does not matter what ink you use, because these are all technically still inkjets. Even as an oil-based, if you print out with cyan, magenta, yellow, because I print out on clear media, it looks like stained glass. It's not opaque. So that's why you still will get the holographic look if you just print onto holographic vinyl. But if you had a white ink in there and you print it on the holographic, you're not going to see holographic. It's going to look like a regular sticker because the white is opaque and it's going to cover up what's underneath it. You also can have the metallic ink. So regular BN20, you can have double magenta, or you can have white, or you can have metallic, but all 5. So right now, like, we got the metallic one. I can't stand it. The ink one is like $200 some odd. It leaks all over the place. We didn't really use as much as I thought we would. I was enticed by it. We don't even use it. So in our metallic ink, we just keep a cleaning cartridge there. You have to have a cartridge in that one. The BN20A is just cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So it's 4 channels. That last one, it's a plate over it, and that's it. That's the only difference. When it first came out, there was an issue with the media clamps, but now they've worked on it, and that's the only difference. The print speed is not different. It works from the same RIP software. You just do not have the option for a 5th ink. Only difference. Okay? But like I said, you have so many things that you can print to. Like I said, it's how I make these cutouts. I used to use my Epson 7720, which is a pigment ink printer. It only prints 13 inches wide. I would use 11 by 17 or 12 by 18 paper. I have to split it up, cut it in sections in the design software. Then I have to print them out. Then I have to do all these individual print and cuts for this Mickey right here. When I showed it the other day, this, if I was still doing these with my 7720, it would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections to get it this big. And so I would have had to piece together 5 different sections onto the foam board and then cut it. Whereas with this, whether I have my own printer or if I outsource it, so if you go get your prints, you take that vinyl, put it on the foam board, and then you just go around and cut it. So you're able to get more done faster, and now it's a more efficient process. Does it cost you more when you are outsourcing it? Yeah. For me in-house, it's less money, but you need to justify paying $6,000 for a printer. If you're just doing a little here and there, it makes no sense to invest that kind of money. Okay. And like I said, that's the beginner one. And then the printers go up. There's several different brands. You got Mimaki, you got Roland, you have some Epson ones that are solvent based and things like that. So that is just the lower model, the BN20. And most crafters will start off there. But if you already know that you have a desire to do larger prints and you want to do 6-foot banners and things like that, then it's a waste of money for you to get that, because one, it prints, it's omnidirectional, it only prints one way, and you're limited in size. But you can do you still can do floor decals. You just have to piece them together, piece it together more than if you had a slightly larger one. You may still have to piece together, but it's not as bad. And even when you have a large format printer, major sign companies will still split prints, because although you may have a big printer and you by yourself, it's just you don't want to teach anybody, don't want to train anybody, you think that you want to keep all the money to yourself, all the profits to yourself, You don't have any help. When you go to do a big install, like a big old window, we don't do those as one big old print. Them suckers separate, because trying to put that up, it's no fun. Okay. It's no fun at all trying to do a big install by yourself, even on a car. With this system, when you see the cars and the trucks and things like that that are wrapped, it's printed with a solvent, eco solvent, or latex type printer. Okay. If you purchase a real RIP software like AccuGrip, you should be able to then change the print profile to use, for example, pigment ink, dye ink. Wait, to use what? I'm not sure. Which printer are you referring to? A RIP software doesn't necessarily change the way that it prints out. So, like, let's say DTF for example, because it's not like, it doesn't have a setup like for that white ink and how it has to print down. The RIP software will help it, like, tell it like how to put the ink down, meaning like, okay, even though these were technically let's say you took the like on an 8550, I'm going to take the photo black and the black, and I'm going to put my white ink in there. The gray channel now becomes where my black ink goes. So it's going to tell it how to print it out. With VersaWorks, the RIP like, that's nothing more than a RIP software. It's not for designing. It'll tell you, you'll pick, which color profile based off of its ink, not a third party ink, because different medias, you will use different settings, and then also telling it how to, like, where to cut it at. That's what that would be for. So I'm not sure what you are referring to. If you can give me a little bit more clarity on which printer you're talking about, that would be awesome. All right. So we talked about dye-based pigment ink, sublimation, solvent, eco solvent, latex, DTF, DTG. Kind of somewhat talked about that, because direct to garment, direct to film, and now you have, it's not. So this is a question I've gotten, is DT, people will say DTF and then DTF, like UV DTF, is it the same thing? It is not. It's a different type of ink. It's a different type of process. So no, you would not be able to use that same printer to be able to put designs onto cups with the whole UV DTF. They are two separate ones. So you would have to have separate systems, separate printers for that. Okay. But there's another one, UV printing. I forgot about most. It's not common. So I'm not saying that these are the only print methods, because then you have like a UV printer, which doesn't use, like, the ink at all and stuff. And like, you have the big old flatbed UV printers, but that's something that's further down the line. If you are still trying to figure out pigment ink, dye-based ink, and sublimation ink, and DTF, you're not ready for UV. UV is great if you have a laser cutter and you're cutting acrylic. It's great because a UV printer will allow you to print to your acrylic as well. Okay. But DTF and DTG are for fabrics. They are not for putting designs on hard substrates. So if you can't, that printer costs a lot. Like, those printers can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And they're still, according to some people, limited. No one printer is ever going to give you it's ever going to meet all of your needs. You're going to need several printers. So if you wanted to do apparel, but you also wanted to do hard substrates, you have to then figure out if you want to do sublimation ones, where you don't have any feel. There's no hand feel. Like, you don't feel anything. It just feels like the regular tumbler. Oh, I almost hit myself in the face. Or if you want, I've done eco solvent wraps, and you just print it to the vinyl and you wrap it around it. You can feel it on the edges. You'll feel it. If someone tries hard enough, they can peel off, even though it's permanent vinyl. and then you have like the DTV one. I mean, UV, DTF, and that basically is still a wrap. You put it on there, you pull it off, you end up seeing a clear line around it. You have screen printing that can be put onto those. You have UV printing that can be put onto a cup. So there are several print methods. You also have white toner, but it's not one paper. So white toner is just the ink. It's just the process. But you then have to buy additional things to put it on certain items. So they have hard surface papers and they have papers that are made for you to put on shirts. It is not a one size fit all with the paper, and the paper for shirts, it's an A and B, and that ish is expensive. So the print is expensive. Look into how much those transfers cost as well, because it might seem like it's an easier method, but with those transfers costing how much they cost, you may decide, okay, well, my shirts need to be more. If you're struggling right now with people buying your vinyl shirts, your sublimation shirts, your DTF shirts, do understand that going to white toner, you are going to spend more money. Does that toner last a lot longer than inkjet printers? Yes. But the ink or the toner part of it is just one component. You have to buy the papers, and for shirts, it's a part A and part B. There are several steps to it. They're not made for longer runs because you're going to have to print it out. You have to marry, and marrying it is not like, honestly speaking, sublimation paper in 30 seconds. It's more like 120 seconds just to get the adhesive to stick to the back of the part A. So part B is the adhesive, part A is the print, and you will put it on there for it to stick to it. Wherever there's toner, it will bind to that. And then you have to kind of let that cool, put that on your shirt, then press it to your garment, let it cool. Then there's a technique to peeling it off so that that ish does not come up. So if you're thinking that your life is going to be 1,000 times easier going to white toner, hunty, no. It just offers you, because you can do shirts with it, but because it's still at its core a toner printer, you can do other things with it. You can put designs on hard substrates. You can print to colored cardstock because of that white ink, because all other inks are going to be translucent. So there are benefits to it, but if you're only looking at it because you see these quick TikToks, you see these quick live videos saying, yeah, it changed my life, I do that ish is not no wham bam, thank you ma'am, and it's easy money. Like that's not the case. Okay. Which would you suggest if you want to add to your sublimation business? What do you mean to add to your sublimation business? If you have a sublimation business, you have a sublimation printer. I see a lot of people that they will say that, and it's like, are you trying to add to your business? You want another service. Well, who do you service? What are their needs? That will determine what would be another printer to get into. But if you have a sublimation business, your only concern should be going from a small format printer to a wide format printer to a large format printer to a larger format printer, from an easy press to a regular heat press to a large format press to a roller press. Sublimation business would be doing now doing cut and sew. So that would be the track that you would take to scale up your sublimation business. But adding a printer like an eco-solvent printer, that has nothing to do with sublimation. So it's not adding to your sublimation business. But now if you have a custom business, that's different. No, they are not. 16600 uses pigment ink. 15,000 uses dye-based ink. They are not the same printer in any way, shape, or form. All right. I have 2 minutes to go until 3 o'clock. So my goal is to be done by 3. Which printer am I missing? Which printer? And no one's asking questions. So that means y'all just going to take whatever information I give you. And if you ask specific questions about any of these, y'all aren't asking them. So that's on y'all, not on me. So to add to your customs business, who is your audience? Who are your customers? What is it that they need? They all offer different capabilities. So I can't say what would be the best to add. We added based off of the needs that we had. So I like doing yard signs. I'm big on graphics. So I have a business that's based off of custom graphics. And I'm really looking into anything and everything. I don't really like shirts. I like harder substrates. I like flyers. I like banners. So I really don't look into a lot of things that are specific for just making like shirts. Now, if you're although don't get me wrong, I do plan to get a DTG printer, because there's a part of our business, because we do fulfillment. We've done fulfillment for actual companies and brands and stuff. So that's going to help, especially with the shorter runs versus getting DTF prints and stuff like that. Like we can just kind of print that on there, but there's a lot of steps to it. I was an event planner. So initially the printer that I chose was, I didn't have a general custom business. I didn't have a sublimation business. I had an event planning and event decorating company. So I'm now looking at all of the different things that I need for an event and stuff like that. And that's where I started building my printer inventory, if you would say, and then researching other things. So for yard signs, we outsourced for 3 years before we got a rolling BN20. So you have to really look at your business and where you want it to go, what services you want to provide, and know that they're going to be marketable and you're going to have clientele for it. And then you decide on the printer. If I was still like in my event space, I wanted the white toner for hard substrates, being able to do acrylic menus or on glass and things like that. I do not plan. So when we get our white toner printer, don't expect me to show you not an area video about A and a B and marrying it, because I'm not about to spend my money on that, because that's not what I want it for. I have no desire to do apparel. Like if you do see a video, it's going to be this was a Hail Mary last minute. Like I really had to do this because I had no other option, but that's not why I am purchasing it. I have specific reasons and specific projects why I purchase each printer that we have. They all serve a different purpose. No, you can you put pigment ink? Okay, just explain this. Can you put pigment ink in there? If you want to, sure. Your colors are not going to match. They are two different types of ink. Your prints will be dark. So you cannot want the properties of a pigment ink and that they're water resistant, but I want it with a cheaper printer. Yes, the 15,000 is only what, 700. The 16,650 is 1,000. You're going to have to pay that extra $300 to properly print pigment ink. So many people want to do that. Oh, I want it to be water resistant, but I want to put it in a $200 EcoTank print. I got a 2,800. I got an extra one, whatever. I want to put it in there. Sure, go ahead. If color accuracy is not a major factor for you, go ahead. For some people, they feel like, oh, it's a small detail, like a small difference. My customers will be okay. Some people, they're not about that life. So you have to decide. But my recommendation would be to spend the extra $300 and get a 16,600. You are very informative. Thank you, Brandy. If anyone decides to get white toner, I wouldn't purchase one larger than 8.25 paper size, because there's no saving on the transfers. The software will split. I don't necessarily agree with that, because if you have projects, it will split it, but that makes no sense to, doesn't make any sense to split something and have to do it separately when you have a larger one. Like, So if I'm doing high volume, I don't have time for splitting. So you have to think about your business. So I don't necessarily agree with that statement. You can, just because it's a large format, you can print up to that size. So if you are doing a smaller project, you can then put the smaller paper in. You can purchase smaller paper and put it in there. With your larger paper, if you're not going to use it all, you can cut it down and put in a custom size. So I'm not going to necessarily agree with that, because a large format or wide format would actually work better for our needs. And when you have a large format, even if you're doing smaller items, just like with sublimation, I can fit more items on there, which in turn will allow me to be more efficient. So I don't necessarily agree with that statement. Now is good time to purchase your DTG. Epson was down to 10K when I checked recently. Epson is coming on the new one. Well, I actually don't want an Epson DTG. So if you're in the market for an Epson DTG, she's letting you know that they are $10,000 less than what they were before, because now they have a lot of competition. I actually don't want an Epson one. I don't plan to get the Epson version. There's actually a lot more out there than just Epson, but they are the most known because they were kind of the first. I have both, but I don't want to buy different inks. Yeah, sorry, can't help you there. I'm not going to say even if you're doing large volumes. I mean, again, you have to know, you have to have a need for it. So if you are doing, even if you're doing large volumes, but your large volume is small substrates, y'all know in sublimation, I am team small. I advocate for team small all day, every day. So if you're doing a lot of smaller items, it is a waste of money to get a large format printer. But if you plan to do larger items, even if you're not doing it on a high scale or like a high volume, like you're not doing a lot of units, but the majority of your projects that you are using it for are larger, then it makes more sense to get the wide format printer. Or for efficiency purposes, you might be doing a lot of smaller items, but because you can fit more of them on a sheet, it's going to be better to have the large format printer. Because that's kind of how I am when it comes to the EcoSolvent. I love my Roland BN20. It does print slow as molasses, but like if I was doing high volume, it wouldn't really benefit me. You know, if I had a printer that was like 36 inches, I can do 2 yard signs or 2 posters in the same amount of time, because it's going to go across and it's going to print it, the whole thing, no matter what. So if I had 1 or if I had 2, it's going to take the same amount of time. So I'm able to get double the work in the same amount of time. So a larger one would be more beneficial. It's not that this one doesn't work, but a larger one would allow me to do more. It's all about understanding your business, how much efficiency you need. Each printer that you get should be based off of efficiency. If you are saying, oh, I just want to start this, I want to, just, yes, you can get the small EcoTank printers, but they print smaller. I mean, they print slower. So you're not going to be as efficient as I am. So it's like, even if you're doing tumblers, somebody with the smaller format printer, they're like, man, how are they charging that way? Or they're doing like these numbers or whatever. Like, it's taking me forever to print, it's doing this and doing that, where I can go and I can print one faster and I can print 2 tumbler wraps to 11 by 17 versus, and it's only like a few seconds different, where you're kind of printing out just one. I'm going to be more efficient. I'm going to be able to get them out faster. If a client comes and they need it in a shorter time frame, your company can't even fathom looking at that. Your prices might be better than mine. Like you might have, lowballed whatever, but if your turnaround time is slower than mine, even though I'm more expensive, if they need them in that time frame, guess who they're going to go with? They're not going to go with you just because your quote is lower, because you don't have the proper equipment for efficiency. That's why, as a business mentor, business coach, business professor, business therapist, I go and I try to help you understand the business that you have, where you are now, and being okay. So many people try to make you guys feel inadequate in where you are, and oh, you need to scale, you need to grow. If you're not ready for that, if it's just you, it's okay to make whatever the max amount of money that you can make with the equipment that you have. It's okay. The equipment that you have may not be able to generate six figures, and that is okay. If you desire six figures and you worked out the numbers and realize that I'm not going to hit six figures with this equipment, you now have to make a decision to figure out how you're going to get the equipment that's going to allow you to hit your financial goals. That is the difference between me as a business consultant and business strategist and a lot of other people. New here. Thank you for saying that. Well, look, you new here and you got a whole good gym. Someone says help, LOL. What do you need help with? It's now raining, so it's gonna be a little minute before we leave out this house this office because it is raining. So the rain gave you a few more minutes. If you guys have questions, let me know. I know, Aquisha, I'm not sure. I see your name still up there where it says like for gifts. If you're still on, I know you said before that you had a question about like a specific method, but I don't remember what it is. If you can let me know what that method was. And let me just go over here and make sure I was not missing anything. Ooh, I see someone put gray here. It wasn't, but that's actually going to be a good point. Someone put gray on here, right? The 8550. Once you convert that to a sublimation printer, the true benefits of that printer goes out the window. I'm telling you now. The benefits of what the 8550 is with the original ink. The moment you put sublimation in there, you're paying extra. You got a gray ink that's not going to help improve your prints. It's not going to make it look better. It can actually probably even disrupt some stuff. It's no different. The 8550 is no different than the 15,000. It's going to be no different than a 2800 and how it prints. The print resolution is a little bit different. So it will put your inks kind of closer together, and it's going to minimize the banding lines that you may have and just how sharp and crisp it looks. But as far as color-wise, the moment you put sublimation ink in it, what it was designed for and the benefits of it, and it being a photo printer, goes out the window. Sublimation, once you put that ink down, the heat activates it, and it's so yes, you will see a difference between getting a printer that's like a 2800 or 47 because its print resolution is lower. But compared to a 16600 or 16650, outside of the color gamut, the resolution is going to be the same. There's no additional benefits. That gray ink is for those who do photos, and they will end up doing a lot of black and white photos, grayscale photos. It allows it to not just use up so much of the black ink, and by having that gray, you're going to have a softer transition, and you're going to have better black and white. That's what that gray is for grayscale. It does not help your color prints in any way, shape, or form. It's not like having an artisan printer and you have a light cyan or a light magenta to pick up on those different color ranges. It's not like having the Roland with the orange ink in it or the red ink in it to improve your color tones and your color range. It does nothing for you if you are using it for sublimation. So if it's on a shelf and there's a 15,000 and an 8550, get the 15,000. If there is an 8550 and a 16600 and you have $200 more that you can find somewhere, get the 16600. Okay. What HTV do you use for my Roland BN20? I am partial to Caesar products. I like the way that they weed. So for me, I will say I don't really use my Roland for a lot of HTV products. I think there's just other methods that are just more efficient. I don't really like the way that it feels. So I don't really use mine for a lot of those things. But I use Caesar and I prefer like weeding it. Caesar easy, color print easy, weeds better, but it's thicker. The one for PU, it is thinner, but it weeds horribly. But I am partial to Caesar products. But they're not the only one out there, but I'm just partial to those. I have a Sawgrass 500 and a Cricut. My business is growing and needs something more efficient. So by more efficient, is it the cutter part? Is it the printer part? By more efficient, is it as you're growing, are you getting more requests for larger items and you're tired of piecing them together? Okay, so you know how I got the new F570, the dash towel, all 30 got messed up. I'll type what happened in the next comment. So the 570 was putting down way too much ink. As I folded and shipped together, the ink ghosted right onto the other towel. Not sure if it's just leftover ink transferred to others and ship. That's kind of weird. Because once they're sublimated, it should be there. I mean, unless it was like really hot heat. So when you took them off the heat press, did you put them one on top of the other? That's kind of weird. I don't know if that, because I don't care if you put down a whole lot of ink. Putting down a whole lot of ink, depending on the paper that you are using, what that will do is whether or not it's going to absorb it some, if it's going to sit on top, if you're going to have pinwheels. A sublimation substrate, I don't care how much ink you put on there, can only take so much of those gases. At some point, it is like I am filled to capacity. There is a such thing as over sublimating, and over sublimating is not about burning it. That's then at that point, you're not really over sublimating, you just straight up burning that bitch, okay? So it's not about over sublimating to where it looks brown. Once you over sublimate, you actually lose color because it is now like, I don't have anywhere else for all this extra ink that is here. I'm going to go through the back. So if it was a towel, I'm going to come out the back and I'm going to bleed out the back and I'm going to gas out through the back of this towel because there's nowhere else for me to go. So it's probably not the amount of ink and, on the paper or it being overly saturated with ink. It's something else. You think washing would wash leftover ink off? Yeah, so there's no such thing as, it has to go somewhere. So if it did ghost, I mean, it's like if it went through the back and the back had like almost like a full image on it, it's because it started to seep through. But there was no such thing as an excessive or like extra ink on your substrate because it can only hold so much. What material do you use for your foam boards? You have mentioned it, but I'm watching while working. I just use, we have a company, it's like a no-name one when we get them from the four. We have some that are 4. Is this the one? No. We have some that are 4 feet by 8 feet that we just get from our local print supply store here. If I'm doing just a 20 by 30, I don't use the Dollar Tree ones. I only use Elmer's. But most time it's from a print shop here and they don't have a name. It's just high quality, high density foam core board. So you need larger and faster. So if you need larger and you like the way the Sawgrass prints, then get a 1000. I will say the Sawgrass prints faster than your Epson printers. So if you're considering going to an Epson for faster, you're not going to get faster. Sawgrass definitely prints out faster than the Epson one. But for larger, yes, there's some that are going to be larger and less expensive. But if you like the way the Sawgrass is, then just invest in the 1000. And most people don't know this. Sawgrass also has a 24-inch sublimation printer, and you can do that as well. So it was two, but I'm confused by this because it looks like it's in a different. So when you put them down, were they going in the same direction? And are you sure it was not there when you pressed it and put them on top? Because yeah, that's ooh. I would test it with something else first. Like instead of saying like it's just the shipping, unless it was extremely hot, and I do mean hot, 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 because I have I've done towels and things like that, and I've never seen that happen. I would test it and just kind of see like if it's just sitting out. So do 2 towels, put them on top of each other, and just have them sitting in your workplace and see if it somehow gases off. But if it was you have to remember, sublimation is activated by heat. So if it happened to be somewhere where there was an excessive amount, like it was just hot as HE double hockey sticks, maybe that's why. Because it looks like it's going in the opposite direction. But I would do a test. I am one where when I have issues, I test out my theories on what's happening. I don't consider that to be a waste of material. It is for me to have the knowledge that I need to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And, we're running a great company. So I would do 2 towels. Actually, maybe even do like 4 to 6 towels. Put 2 or 3 of them together, have one on the table to see if there's any change in them. Put 2 or 3 in a box and just tape it up, and maybe even if it's hot where you are, sit outside, see what happens with that. But you have to test different, like you have to change certain variables to do an actual like accurate test. And I'm a science geek, so I like changing variables up to do testing and troubleshooting. I'm thinking maybe the ink came through the paper without me knowing, seeing I was putting too much ink down on your paper. So with ours, if you were pressing for a longer time, like again, this is also where that pressing it for too long, it doesn't matter. I've printed with premium presentation paper matte on our paper. And yes, it's going to overly saturate it. However, when I go to press it, I'm still doing 365 for 30 seconds. So if you end up increasing that time, or you increase that temperature to 400, you did 60 seconds, our paper is a high release paper. You over sublimate it. Like you let it go too long and that ink had nowhere to go. So it probably went through it. And if you had, like, if you weren't changing out your what's that thing called? Your cover sheet, your butcher paper, your parchment paper, if it was on there, once you pressed it and you're pressing for a long time, it can regas out and stick on there. Hello, can Epson 42, any Epson printer can be converted for sublimation. As long, if it's a EcoTank printer, just pour the ink in. If it's a cartridge-based printer, you have to find someone that sells the compatible cartridges, because the chip is programmed for each one. So although the chips may look the same, a 202, a 212, a 252, a 407, a 127, all those are the same size actual cartridge. The chip on it is what's different. A 702, an 702, 812, 802, or 720, something like that. They're all the longer cartridges, but the chip on it is different. So you would have to find a company that sells the whatever number is on your Epson cartridges. You have to look for that number with the words refillable cartridges behind it, and you have to get your cartridge. You don't have to get your ink and paper from them if they sell both, but you have to get those cartridges. And some of them are one-time are single-use chips, which means you're also going to have to keep buying your chips from that particular company. What did you say was the best ink and paper to use for foam boards? I did not say what was the best for it. Depends on the type of printer that you're using. You can go to Walgreens and have them print out on their adhesive photo paper, or even if it's on regular paper and you put your own adhesive. I am partial to liquid glue. Some people like spray glue. I personally use a Roland BN20, so I use Orajet, and it is not paper, it is vinyl. And I print that out and I put it on there. So I'm not going to say that one is best. It just depends on who you're getting it printed from and how you're going to use it. Now, if it was something that's going to be outdoor, it's not necessarily a type of ink or paper. I guess it is an ink. It's having someone who has a latex printer print that out for you versus an eco-solvent printer or solvent printer. Let's see. What about for HTV? Meaning you want to do printable HTV? Hello. Why does my printer go through the initiation process every time my cartridges aren't recognized? Because that's just what it does. If you have like a 7820, 7840, anytime you go in and you change it, it's not necessarily, so they call it initializing, but every time you change your inks, even on my 7720, like any cartridge-based printer, when you change the inks, it automatically does a printhead cleaning. So on the newer ones, they just call it initializing, but all it's doing is doing the printhead cleaning. So with the newer ones, as soon as you change it out, like it says cartridge not recognized, and you put a new chip on it, as soon as you close it, it automatically does your printhead cleaning. Whereas with my old school workforces, it will say it'll say complete. Minute you go to send a print, it goes through the printhead cleaning process. So I personally just, as soon as I change out my ink, I immediately go to printhead cleaning and I run a printhead cleaning so that the next time I send a print, it just goes straight to it. So with the 7720, it should not technically do like an initializing, but it's always going to do a printhead cleaning. No matter what, it will do a printhead cleaning because you're putting a new ink in there. So you have to remember, in theory, if you are using a brand new Epson, there was a seal on that. And the same way that it has to prime that and get the ink flowing, it thinks that it's like, even though it tells you that this is not a genuine Epson cartridge or whatever, they don't know if that is just, you're just putting new ink in there, if it was completely sealed. So it's going to go through that to make sure that it's filtering the ink through your print heads. It does it every time I go to print. It stops recognizing it, and they are new cartridges. So that's something totally different. I'm not sure if you're using I cannot speak for anybody else's cartridges. If there's a problem with it, if it's just stopping in the middle of a print, that's not necessarily a cartridge issue. That would be a Wi-Fi issue. If it's saying cartridge not recognized, it might be something with the chip that you're using. We do sell 252s. You can try out new cartridges, new chips. I'm not sure how long you've had those. So it might be a problem with your cartridges. Oh, yeah. So I'm not sure. I can go and give you 1,000 different reasons. I can't exactly say why. All I can recommend is that you do several tests to figure out where that issue came from to avoid it the next time. So if you suspect that it may be something from shipping, then you would print out some, put them in a box, and see if it bleeds. If you suspect that it might be that there's too much ink, do the same thing. So you can do a set that has a lot of ink to it and then press it, have those, and then do one that is less ink and see what happens with that. But you have to take the time to do those tests, write notes and say, okay, this was these variables. Okay, this is what happened. Da, da, da. That's the only way that you're truly going to figure out what happened with those towels. I just got them a few days ago. I'm about to order more because it's nerve-wracking. You got them a few days ago from us? If you have to put a piece of paper in there to push it, that means something's wrong with your cartridges. I've had my printers for 4 years. I've had one of my printers for 4 years. I've never had to do that. So your chips might be loose. It's like things like that. Like if your chips are, if it's moving somehow and it's stopping and saying cartridge not recognized, is it always the same exact color? Is it all of them, or is it just one? Like each time it's a different color, because that's a different issue. Just okay. So you have to also remember, when you put ink in them, it does not reset them. If you don't have a chip resetter, and even though you top them off, they're still going to go cartridge not recognized. So if you go and you print and the first time it was okay, the cyan wasn't recognized. Well, you can go and do another print and then your magenta doesn't recognize and it's going to stop. Then you can print a couple more prints, your yellow might stop. So you have to have either a chip resetter, so you have to have a chip resetter to reset them all to full. If you're going to, if anytime one is low, I recommend resetting them. Oh, if it's all of them, your printer might be going bad. How long have you had that printer? We have to, also accept the fact that if it's becoming a major issue, your printer may be going bad. So if you've exhausted all possibilities, you change out cartridge, even if you try it where you're putting the paper in there and it's still happening, your printer might be, letting you know that I'm on the way to printer heaven. What is my process to switching inks in an EcoTank? Meaning like different brands. I don't recommend that you switch ink in your F570. I highly recommend that you stay with the Epson ink, because the colors, you're going to end up with different colors. So this is our ink. This is the Epson ink. They are slightly different. So I don't recommend doing that. Switching inks is not going to improve your colors, is not going to improve how it sublimates. Now, if you do desire to actually switch out your inks, it's not going to be an easy process and kind of an overnight thing. I don't really recommend opening up your printer and sucking it out, because you end up having more issues. There's more people who open up their printer and try and suck out the ink, and then when they go to put it back, it's not working. So I don't recommend doing that. If anything, it's going to be just keep printing. Some of these high efficiency ones, if you're not printing a lot, it's going to take a long time for that ink to filter out. But you want to print it until you get to that little triangle. That's like kind of like the lowest one, maybe even a little bit lower than that. Then you only want to put a little bit of your ink inside, because again, inks can be different. So with you putting that in there and it's mixing, your colors might be even more thrown off. But if you put like a little bit, you kind of print, you get kind of used to that color. I would say you keep doing it little by little until you feel like you flushed out all of the old ink, and then you can put the new one on top. Or you can simply just put it all on top and just be okay with whatever color shift may happen, but try and get it down to the lowest possible amount. You do not have to add the ink, like do both. Like, how can I say it? If your yellow is low and you had a different brand and now you want to put Honestly Speaking in, do just the yellow. Whenever that magenta becomes low, then you put the Honestly Speaking in. Whenever that cyan becomes low, then you put the Honestly Speaking. The one thing that I can say that you can literally do immediately would be the black ink. Our black ink will make any other black ink much better. I don't recommend EcoTank printers at all. So if it works, so I'm not saying that it cannot be used, but I personally, on this platform, I don't recommend EcoTank printers at all. Workforces, I'm not going to say are a good starter printer. I've been using mine for several years. It has done me well for my needs. I actually have a Sawgrass printer. I can't stand it. I prefer water-based inks over the gel-based ink. So I think it's just about preference. But you can't say like get an actual printer, because my workforce, I've had them for years. I have some that are pigment ink. I have some that are sublimation. It's about knowing how to properly use them and get proper training on them. And they're going to be your workhorse. They're going to be the best thing in your business. So I know for me, my workforces have done me lovely. I absolutely love them. They are the printer that I highly recommend when it comes to converting over an EcoTank printer any day. I've had it for a while, but it only started when I got these new ones. Okay. Yeah. Hello, sweet treats and events. Thank you for following. I was event planner by for a long time. So when it comes to the events, like that is my area. So if there's ever a topic, I really want to kind of have one of those sessions where I talk events and talk stuff like that. I am skilled in making treats such as candy apples, anything with like ready? Huh? Yeah. Anything like your pretzel rods and Oreos and stuff like that, that is also like one of my favorite, like that's my happy place. So at some point we will discuss that on this platform as well. Have you ever had a phantom paper jam in your so I wouldn't necessarily say a phantom one. I mean, I've had paper jams. It's all about like if you had an actual one with paper and then you pull it out. If you pulled it out incorrectly to where so what will trigger the paper jam is if because we had them with our EcoTank printer. The gears that picks it up and rotates, it will stop. And that is what triggers this paper jam, even when it's like not really any paper in there. As it spins, like that part spins, when it gets to a certain point and it stops, that's going to trigger the paper jam. So I've never really had that in my 7720, like that. And then also, if any, like, well, actually, I'm not gonna say that. So I did have it from tray 2. So on one of mine, I could only use tray 1 or the rear feed. And you also have to think about like how thick the paper is and stuff like that. So there's a couple of different things. But normally if it's just saying paper jam and there's nothing in it, you have to take out the back part, shake it up, make sure that your wheels and things are working. If you've done all that and you're still getting it, something in there malfunction, either something broke or there's a malfunction on the motherboard. All right. Well, it has slowed down raining. We got to take the boys to go get shoes for school, and I need to eat. So we are going to close out. Don't forget, guys, that right now, because if you don't remember, it's August. So that's HS Ink month. Right now, all classes are buy one, get one 50% off. And if you buy an honestly speaking product such as paper or ink, whether it's pigment ink or sublimation ink, you will get a class. So for every one product, you get a class for 60% off. So take advantage of those because it is HS Ink month. All right, but all classes right now, like I said, are buy one, get one 50% off. All right. And we are gearing up for the fall session. So make sure that you go on the website, you click for class updates if you're not on that list already, so that you can be notified about all of the amazing classes that are coming up for the fall. If you have suggestions for classes that trainings that you would like to take place, email us and let us know your suggestions, and we'll see if that fits within our curriculum and whether or not we can add that to it for you. But our website is shop.hsink365.com. Okay. I'm about to purchase your ink cartridges. Awesome. All right. And that will ship out tomorrow because it is after 3:00. All orders before 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time get shipped out the same day. After 3 p.m., it goes out the next day, Monday through Friday. We do not ship on the weekends. I got 3 items and 3 classes. Woohoo! All right, y'all. Until next time, have a great one.